Karen Ibasco. Now, more and more business across all industries are pledging to reduce their environmental effect by establishing environmentally responsible workplaces. This entails putting in place regulations and initiatives that support green behavior. There are numbers and, of course, simple and cost-effective steps your business can take not to minimize its carbon footprint and impact on the environment. And, of course, get examples from our last speaker for today's event, Miss Karen Ibasco. Now, to introduce our next speaker, no, Karen Ibasco finished her bachelor's degree in applied physics, major in instrumentation from the UST in 2011, and completed her master's degree in applied physics, major in medical physics, under the DOST scholarship from the same university in 2013. Now, she became a college instructor in the College of Science of UST and practiced her field in radiation oncology as a medical physicist in St. Luke's Medical Center, Global City. After winning the Miss Philippines Earth title in July of 2017, she started advocating about the conservation of energy and embracing the use of renewable energy. Being invited by the Undersecretary of the Department of Finance, she participated in one of the Senate hearings in tax reform for acceleration inclusion, or the TRAIN, by addressing the environmental side of excess tax in petroleum products. In November of 2017, the scope of her environmental advocacy widened after winning the international title of Miss Earth. She participated in local and international climate change conferences, delivered environmental talks, educated both local and international students in environmental protection, and joined the Climate Change Commission and non-governmental organizations such as Conservation of Oceans Resources and Aquatic Life Coral, or Coral. Now, Plastic Solutions as well, and the Worldwide Fund for Nature Philippines on September 21st of 2019. She even represented the Philippines as the first youth ambassador for the Climate Change Commission in the Youth Climate Summit held in the United Nations headquarters in New York. Now, as well as she is also currently the part of the Association of Image Consultants International Global Sustainability Committee. Karen as well is likewise an ambassador for WWF PH. And apart from being a host, a speaker, and an image consultant, in 2020, she also became one of the content creators of the online learning system, Pocket Mentor. Seeing the value in being able to share wisdom and knowledge to inspire people and make a difference in their lives by helping them live with purpose. Now, to help us encourage in an environmentally conscious workplace, here is Miss Karen Ibasco. All right.
Hi,
Miss
good
Karen.
afternoon. Hi,
Good
Jester. Good
afternoon.
afternoon to everyone. I'm just going to share my screen, okay?
Sure, sure. All right. So as we prepare for our last speaker to prepare her presentation, no, again, would like to thank everyone who stayed with us now through the 2-day learning sessions, and it was definitely a blast. And I hope this last topic will definitely give you a very good takeaway as to how we can support for environmental sustainability in the workplace. So this is now us, no, leaders being in the sustainability, no, phase of leadership. Okay. Do you have your
Jester.
screen now?
So, yeah, I think I'm having some technical problems. I couldn't share my screen until now. I think you have a backup with the PowerPoint, and then I can
Right.
just present from you. All right. Very good.
Okay.
Thank you very
Okay.
much. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Karen Ibasco, and today I'm going to be talking about inspiring support for environmental sustainability in the workplace. Okay. On the next slide. How did I started? How did my environmental journey started for me? On the first one, you can see here, I'm actually a physics graduate. So for a lot of people who would say, how did she start? You know, the first thing that you would think when you hear the word physics is momentum and acceleration, which is actually correct. But for a physics graduate, the first thing we actually think about when we hear the word physics is energy. And I wanted to join a platform where it focused on environmental fields. Since my field is not more on environment, I had to do my research. So I did my research on environmental sciences. So what happened was that I wanted to fuse my field in physics and in the environment. I researched about climate change and learned that one of the biggest problems is the emission of carbon to the atmosphere. So I started thinking, how can I connect physics with the environment? I've learned that one of the biggest things that we have nowadays is electricity. Everybody or most of the people have electricity, but one of the sources that we have to power up electricity is the use of fossil fuels. And when we start uh, burning fossil fuels, we emit a lot of carbon to the atmosphere. And that's how I started fusing everything for me. I started understanding if there is a problem, there must be a solution. So fusing my field in environmental sciences with physics, I started advocating about the conservation of energy and the use of renewable energy. That's how everything started for me, understanding things in my field and how I can level it up or tailor it with other fields. On the next slide. I became Miss Earth last 2017. I started traveling the world from Asia to Europe to Africa to North and South America, and I've seen the real issues of climate change. And it's not just in the Philippines. I was able to attend different kind of conferences at the same time to bring it with me, this kind of message of what we can do to really help the planet, not just in the Philippines, but all around the world. All right, on our next slide. I have a question for you. What is the most serious issue facing our world today? According to the World Economic Forum Global Shapers annual survey of 2016, 45% actually said that unique responses identify that climate change and the destruction of natural resources are actually one of them. And it's true. Once you start opening the news and seeing things around you, it's actually real. Now, on the next slide that you're seeing right now, I'm just going to explain a little science so people would understand more about what is really happening to the planet. What is climate change? What is global warming? In our solar system, we know that there is a sun and we have the planet and other planets revolving around the sun. What happens is that when the sun gives its sunlight to the planet, not all of its energy are absorbed by the planet. Some of it are reflected back in space. But some of that sunlight is trapped in the planet for it to become heat. And what traps the heat inside the planet is the greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. That's what makes our planet different from other planets. And what happens is that that's the reason why we're alive in the planet. Because if there's no specific temperature, if it's going to be too cold, it's going to be impossible for any living creature to be alive in the planet. That's why we're alive, because we have a specific heat to actually make us alive. And that is what you call as the greenhouse effect. On the next slide. There you go. That's what you call the greenhouse effect. But what happens is that once you increase the greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, you also increase the heat inside the planet. And that's exactly what's happening to us. That is what you call as global warming that leads to climate change. And later I'm going to show you what's the connection of this to companies, to governments, and even to individuals like you. So I can explain this. A perfect analogy of climate change. Let's say, how can you explain climate change in simple terms? And I was asked that before. How can you explain climate change to a 5-year-old kid? And I found the perfect analogy. You can see here, climate change is as perfect as the science of the human body. For you to become alive, you need heat. And sometimes when you do external factors, such as too much stress, or you eat too much ice cream, or you don't have enough sleep, what happens is that even if you increase 1 degree Celsius in your body temperature, you're going to have a fever. And it's the same as the planet. It's like the Earth is having a fever. That's a perfect analogy. So the climate change or the science of climate change is the same as the science of the human body. That's how I can explain it in simple terms. Now I'm going to explain to you on the next slide. There are external factors that we are doing. That's why we actually increase the greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. First one is the basic and the major one, which is the carbon dioxide from burning of fossil fuels. You use that when you're in your houses, you're in your offices, because you use electricity. The next one, we have methane. Methane is a powerful greenhouse gas from wetlands, agriculture, and landfills, from your biodegradable waste and domestic livestock. As you eat different kinds of meat, it actually increases so much methane before it goes to your table. On the next one, we also have nitrous oxide from automobile exhaust, from fertilizers, from agricultures, and so on. And the next one, we have hydrofluorocarbons and either other type of carbons. Now, HFCs are quite evident in your refrigerators and in your air conditioners. So it's important for you to learn how to conserve energy when you're not using them, because this type of carbons stay in the atmosphere for a long time. Those are some of the sources of greenhouse gases. Here you would see the biggest sources of greenhouse gases from transportation, from mining, from agricultures to landfills and to crop burning. Now, I'm not against the advancement of technology. Definitely I'm not. But we have to be mindful of the limit that we can do, because once we exceed a certain amount of level, we actually do things like this, and there's a huge risk and a huge effect that will backfire at us. And later I would further explain on that. On the next slide, we'll see here that, scientists believe that gases released from industries and agriculture are adding up to the natural greenhouse gas effect, because we do have it. It's a way of our atmosphere or Earth atmosphere to trap energy from the sun. That's why we're alive. But what happens is that what we do as humans, or what we call as human activities, such as burning of fossil fuels like coal, oil, and natural gases, you increase amount of carbon or carbon dioxide, which is the main greenhouse gas responsible for global warming. A lot of people would say, I don't feel the heat in my area of the planet, but when the planet actually starts warming, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be hot in all places of the world. Some of it will be extremely cold, some of it will be extremely hot as the heat transfers from one area to another. Now, on the next slide here you can see the top 10 emitters of greenhouse gases. We don't have it here in the Philippines. We're still a developing country, but the top 10 emitters are China, USA, India, Russia, and so on. So here, it's actually good that we're not here, but it's still important for us to change our ways, because it's still going to be a global effect for us to understand how we can change what's really happening to the planet. And later, I'm going to go on the companies or individual things that we can do to actually help address this kind of issue. On the next slide, here you would see some of the facts that you can really say that climate change is really happening. Climate change is not a hoax. The Earth is warming. That's one thing is for sure. A lot of scientists have seen this from different fields. All their data have coincided with each other, that the average temperature of the Earth's surface has increased by about 0.85 degrees Celsius in the last 100 years, or before pre-industrial times. And this is very fast, because the amount or the rate of advancement of technology before was not as fast as now. And it's very much increasing rapidly during our generation. And I believe now we're about almost 1 degree Celsius, not even 0.85. So this is very alarming. On the next one, you can see here on the graph, you can see in the x-axis, you have the year from 1880 to 2016. And in the y-axis, you would have temperature anomalies and carbon dioxide concentration. Well, in this graph, it's not linear, but you can really see that the temperature anomaly, or the global average temperature, is very much related to carbon dioxide concentration that we release because of our human activities. And you can see a rapid increase here because of the advancement of technology even before it started. So true enough, the Earth is really warming, and it's one thing that we can feel in the Philippines. The next one that I would love people to understand is that the sea level is rising. We are composed of a lot of water in this planet, and high temperatures and extreme weather events and higher sea levels are all linked to warming of the climate. And since 1900s, the sea levels have risen by on an average of 19 centimeters globally. You may think that 19 centimeters is not so big, but when you think of it in a global scale, for you to increase 5 centimeters means that you're going to do a lot of work. So 19 centimeters is a huge deal. And in the Philippines, we're very prone to climate change. I'm going to explain to you later why, because we have long coastlines. And our fellow Filipinos who live in those areas are the ones who would be first affected. The next one, that the ice is melting. We have ice in the North and the South Pole. And here you can see, this is from NASA. The Arctic sea ice has melted from 1984 to 2012 at about this rate, at about this amount. And the ice is quite important because it balances the temperature in the planet. So once it starts melting, there's going to be a lot of changes that's going to happen to the planet. So because of human activities, these are some of the facts. The Earth is warming, the ice is melting, and the sea level is rising. On the next slide, we can see here, that's true, the science is clear, but the future is not. There's actually a documentary by Leonardo DiCaprio. It's called Before the Flood. It's a free documentary where he interviewed different scientists in different fields, that it really shows that this kind of things that are happening to the planet is real. And the data that they actually did with different types of studies are all the same and coinciding with each other. So these are real things that are happening to the planet. And what are the things that we can do as human beings to actually change the things? On the next slide, let's go to Philippines' vulnerability to climate change. The Philippines is quite vulnerable to climate change, and there is nothing much we can do about our geographical location. We are located in this side of the planet. We have long coastlines. That's why we're quite vulnerable. But at the same time, there are things that we can do to change, such as adaptation and other things that we can apply. So the Philippines ranked among third countries most risk of disasters in World Risk Report in 2016. But in the World Risk Report in 2019, we actually lowered to ninth, meaning that we're actually doing something to help address this issue. Even though we're geographically located here, there are ways for us to adapt to this kind of things, and our susceptibility and our adaptation and then lack of more of understanding of what or how we can adapt to the changes of the climate actually has an effect. That's why we lower down to the ninth level for this rank. On the next one, here you would see one of the biggest victims of climate change. Before, you can see here the corals were very much alive, and on the other end you would see that the corals were starting to bleach. This is very important for us in the Philippines because we depend on a lot of our fisher folk, and corals are used for spawning and feeding of a lot of marine species. So when ocean acidification happens because of the uptake of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and the warming of oceans, this is what happens. And we have seen this not just in the Philippines, but in all around the world, that corals are starting to bleach. And once that happens, the marine creatures would started to lower down its rate as well. And it will be affected to us, or we will be affected in the long run, because we will always have a chain effect with this kind of things. On the next slide, the plastic pollution. This is one thing that we have, one of the biggest things that we have. In the Philippines, we are known to be one of the biggest plastic polluters in the world. You would see sea turtles, sea birds, and other sea creatures such as whale sharks that actually eat plastics that are thrown in the ocean or leaks in the ocean. This kind of sea creatures cannot distinguish plastics from not, so they tend to eat them. But what's sad about that is after their bodies decompose, the plastic will just simply go back to the ocean. So it's a process that it stays there. Plastics are non-biodegradable, but they degrade into small pieces called microplastics. And it's easily eaten by sea creatures when microplastics already is attained. And there are also some studies in which some of the fishes that we actually eat on our tables already have microplastics. So the things that we do are already backfiring at us. There are things that we have to learn to control or to balance with things like this, because there are necessary plastics. There are also unnecessary plastics, such as single-use plastic, that I'm going to talk about later. On the next slide, there are things that we can do, and of course, as a whole country. The Paris Agreement happened last December of 2015 in Paris, where the world leaders came together to address this issue. So I've mentioned earlier that the global average temperature was about 0.85 degrees Celsius to 1 degrees now. And they have met last 2015 because they have to make contributions, each country, for us to start cutting the carbon emissions so that the global average temperature would not exceed 1.5 degrees Celsius. The reason for that is once we start exceeding that temperature in the planet, there's going to be extreme weather events, more than what we're experiencing right now. And it did happen. It took effect last November 4 of 2016, and the Philippines is a part of the Paris Agreement. We did sign it. Now on the next slide, recently the COP26 happened, and it was in Glasgow, Scotland. And this is very important because after it happened in COP21 for the Paris Agreement, the world leaders came together again because they have to renew their commitments, because our temperature is rapidly increasing rather, continuously, and we have to renew our contributions per country. And I understand it's not as easy as just focusing on environmental sustainability. There is a balance between economic growth and environmental sustainability, because there is a huge factor when it comes to the finances of this. So that's what they actually talked about in COP26. And there were good decisions that happened, and we're looking forward to what's going to happen in the next years, because a lot of scientists says that this is going to be the last leg for us to change the things that we are doing or the things that we are actually experiencing before we hit a specific temperature. It might be irreversible already. It might not happen in our generation, but it might happen the generation after us. So we have to be careful to make this kind of decisions. On the next one, you would see the solutions, and you already have seen the causes, and there are solutions that we can do. There are different stakeholders here, like the government and companies and individuals. Whatever you do at home, you bring it in the office. And I know a lot of people are working from home, but afterwards we're going to go back to the offices, and it's still going to be environmentally connected. So we have simple things that we can do. On the next slide, the first one is as simple as conserve your energy. Sometimes, it's as simple as saying conserve your energy, but this is true. Do not leave your lights unattended. Do not leave your other electric fans unattended. If you're not using your laptops or your television, do not leave it on standby mode, because it consumes a lot of energy. Just imagine you're just one household. Can you imagine if all the cities and all the provinces do the same thing? The amount of megavolts that you can save by not consuming energy will be a lot. And there are also other appliances that have what we call as phantom load. So sometimes they're actually turned off, but they still consume energy. So you have to be careful to plug it out, such as microwaves that has clocks. It actually continues to consumes a lot of energy when you just leave it there. The next one is for you to reduce your food waste. This is very important because before that food went on your table, there's so many carbon emissions that happened along the way. And can you imagine if you just throw it out of the window or throw it in the landfills? You're actually increasing more of the methane in the landfills. So it's actually good for us to start reducing our food waste. And later I'm going to show you some of the things that you can actually do, or companies that accepts biodegradable waste for it not to go to the landfills. On the next one, diversify our diet. I'm not a vegan, and I'm not against vegan, but what I also encourage my audiences is that if you're a vegan, I truly respect that. That's great. But for other people who are not willing to go on that path, you can actually diversify your diet by eating less meat and more vegetables. You can still eat meat, you can still enjoy it. It's fine. That's what I do. But you have to understand that eating less meat and more vegetables actually help the planet. Did you know that the global livestock industry produces more greenhouse gases compared to all cars, trains, planes, and ships combined? So sometimes when you say no to that burger, you're actually helping the environment. I'm not telling you to stop, but to lessen and to limit the things that you eat. The next one, you can see here to also conserve water. Water is important because once water is out, we will not be alive. And it's important for us to understand this, because without water, it's impossible for us to actually live in the planet. So conserve your water. Don't allow it to pour. Just fix the faucet, because there's just so much water that you can save. The next one here, protect the forest. It's not very much applicable for more companies, but protecting the forest is very important because trees have a lot of benefits that people do not understand. Once it floods, it's the one that seeps in the water. It helps to make the soils intact so it won't erode. There's actually more benefits to that, more than the things that we actually know. So if there are things that you can do in your company, protecting forests is very important. The next one is to walk, bike, and use trains if it's just near. Now, during the pandemic, our bike lanes have started, and it's important for you to also, if it's just near you, you feel that it's more comfortable or convenient for you, it's great to walk and use bike lanes nowadays. It really helps the planet by not burning your gas. I'm not saying no, don't use your cars, because I still also have a car, but try to limit it once you also use it. The next one is understanding how we can refuse plastic. I'm not saying to refuse all types of plastic, but single-use plastic is one of them. When you're in the offices, it's good. Next, that we have tumblers. Everybody, it's important to actually have their tumblers. No matter where I go, I always have my tumbler with me, so I won't buy plastic bottles that has water. And can you imagine how much plastics you're not consuming when you actually have your tumblers with you? And it's good to always have it because water is important for your body. The next one, try to avoid using plastic straws. I know it's convenient for us, but we will actually still be alive if you don't use plastic straws. It's one thing that I always tell people. If you really want to use straws, just bring metal straws or bamboo straws with you, or as simply as don't use straws anymore, because it's a single-use plastic. So it's something that we have to learn to avoid. It's an unnecessary plastic. And the next one is when you go to your groceries and you shop, you use your eco bags so you don't consume those sandbags over and over again. And can you imagine you're actually reusing these eco bags, and they're very much durable. So be careful with the materials that you also use with this kind of eco bags that you use. And you can also recycle the plastic on the next slide. We have, I've learned about plastic solutions as well. They actually use eco bricks. So they actually tried their very best to encourage people to lessen the consumption of plastic and to remove the plastics from the oceans. So what they do is, if you have empty plastic bottles, you're just going to stuff it with other plastics that you can't avoid, and they use it as eco bricks. So this is not to encourage people to make more eco bricks, but this is to encourage people to understand how much plastics you consume in a day. So when these eco bricks are functional, they actually use it to build low-cost housing. They use it to build walls, or you can use it to build garden walls for your gardens. Instead of using bricks, you actually use eco bricks. And on the next one, there are also recycling centers in the Philippines, such as the Plastic Flamingo. They accept your plastics, so we can do it individually and by company. They accept huge amount of plastics, and they actually do eco lumbers with it. So instead of throwing your plastics in the landfills, you can segregate it and you can drop it in the Plastic Flamingo. And for biodegradables, we have a lot of biodegradables in the house. The World Wide Fund for Nature have collaborated with Green Space, and you can actually start to separate your biodegradable inside the house, and they will collect it in a bucket. And it's as simple as taking a grab. You can start using the app. It's called SoilMate, and they would start picking the bucket in your house by using bokashi composting, and you can easily separate it from your other trashes. And it's actually truly will help the environment by separating your plastics and your biodegradable. So these are some of the practical things that we can do from our house and even in the offices when you go back. And on the next one, to end, how can we further help? Of course, there are simple things such as reusing, reducing, and recycling. It's as simple as that. And do not forget to educate other people. Sometimes the simple things are the things that we forget, but we can actually do so much when we practice it and explain it or educate other people to do it with us. It's going to have a big effect. On the next slide, I was asked this question before, and I said it not just because I wanted to give a great answer. I was asked, who or what do you think is the biggest enemy of Mother Earth and why? And without hesitation, I said that one of the biggest problems in this world is not climate change. The biggest problem is us because of our ignorance and apathy. So what we have to do is to start changing our ways, to start recalibrating our minds and redirecting our steps, because together, as a global community, our micro efforts will have a macro effect to help save the planet. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much, Miss Karen and Pasco. That's a really good, no, actually a trip, no, down memory lane because it's very important for us, even as employees, to again remember this, the basics. No, we had mental health champions, we have employee engagement champions, but we have environmental champions in our company. So it's best really to even help the earth, no, even actually as from the Proud Green Building, no, or due to
Mhm.
Proud Green Building, the Philippines first sustainable city to be built by 2022 is here at the new Clark City, and it
Mhm.
is known to be the in the Central Luzon, expected to be completed in next year 2022. So they're actually encouraging employees to be riding on bikes
Mhm.
while they travel to work. And then of course, no, it's always best to think that these initiatives can definitely help, even not just the earth but even the company as well. No,
Yeah.
we always ask these questions: are companies really going green? No, is going green
Mhm.
profitable for business? Those are the questions faced by the advocates. But in
Mhm.
contradiction to big business, actually, that sustainability, they said that it hinders profitability, but actually it's not. Now, going green can actually help you save a lot of money. Now, according to
Yeah.
McKinsey, in contrast to conventional approaches, a sustainability strategy can significantly diminish operating budgets by as much as 60%. Now, before we end your session, Ms. Karen, I'd like to ask some questions. So, what does it really mean when a company, or let's say, for example, even households or small
Mhm.
businesses, is going green? What do you mean by a company or organization or a household is going green?
What it means is that you're starting to change your ways. It's not necessarily completely changing everything. It's impossible. Even with us, I still do things that for other people, it might be a violation. But the start of your changing ways, even though it's small, it's a big deal. You becoming more aware and you making steps to actually change that is already going green. A lot of people would think, oh, we're still using this and this. It's okay. It doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen in a snap. Even with renewable energy, it takes so much time. But the fact that you would make a change with simple things is already a big deal in going green. So that's how I always answer these kind of questions and encourage people. It doesn't have to be overwhelming for you. You can start small and then you can continue on that with momentum and then having or being thriving in that area.
Right. I know that the company are doing their part now, because I've been seeing companies with these signs, no, posted on their walls that we should omit the use of plastic. Why don't we bring our tumblers, etc., etc. But apart from that, what can we also do? No. So what do you believe are the practical ways, no, the businesses or organizations or even small groups can be more eco-friendly, apart from the usage of the bags? A while ago, it was mentioned a while ago,
Mm-hmm.
even eating or purchasing burgers, no, outside can also help, no. So I
Mm-hmm.
was also amazed by that, but by that statement. So what else, no, are the practical ways, no, businesses, organizations, or even individuals can do to become more eco-friendly?
I guess one thing is that I've worked with other brands and companies as well. They work with other companies, they collaborate with other companies, and even with the government, with the Climate Change Commission. That's what they do. Because there are other companies that I've worked with, they're very much into this initiative going green. So they work with the Climate Change Commission, they would have different projects with them to actually help lessen the plastics that they produce. So there are different types of things, such as in the Philippines, we have what we call is enhanced producers responsibility. So other companies are starting to change the type of plastic they actually produce. Or if you're not that kind of company, you can work with Plastic Flamingo and other recycling centers to start collecting that kind of plastics in your workplace and to bring it to them to actually be recycled. I always work with, I always tell people to do collaborations because we always want to do it in a macro scale. And we started small, encourage other people, and then we can encourage our companies as well to work with other companies that focuses on the environmental aspect.
Well, actually, that is very interesting. No, it's good to collaborate, not just with agencies, no, doing environmental initiatives, but even with companies nearby. No, even your close companies now around the vicinity, you can collaborate with them and start an initiative where you both companies now can help to have no an environmentally conscious,
Mm-hmm.
not just business, but environmentally conscious workplace. So any parting words, Miss Karen, before we end your session?
Oh, I just want to thank you for having me here. Thank you for giving me a chance to talk about environmental sustainability. I hope that more and more people would understand that you don't have to be overwhelmed to change your things or your ways overnight. You can start small, build your momentum, and we can all try together to understand how we can be environmental sustainable together in the planet.
All right. Thank you very much again, Karen, for encouraging our viewers, no, to become environmentally conscious through shared practices, as well as, of course, in the workplace that can help people feel healthier and more motivated to thrive at work. So please stay, Karen, so we get to learn more about Pocket Mentor.